Should be good now? Okay. So when Ben asked me to, lead a keynote on the Metaverse, I was evidently quite excited about it until I learned about the timing. So typically the timing after lunch is where you place the most irrelevant content because half the audience is asleep in food coma. I see a few sleeping faces here. And then worse, I'm standing between you and the Female Pleasure Society, which sucks. So let's think how to make this work and keep it short and funky. And therefore, I'd like to jump to basically the conclusion if you ask me about the state of the Metaverse. I tend to say we are virtually nowhere. And that's actually a great moment to be in. We're virtually nowhere. We're in this moment. And a hand up who recognizes what this device is. You're old enough to know. So this is one of the original car phones. And we are in this moment where there's technology that is clumsy, expensive, and niche. And we're in a moment where few users actually see the value in the experience of using a car phone. There are even fewer would see the vision where this could go, and no one would have predicted 35 years ago, that today would all be on iPhone 15. So that's the moment where we're in, with a few factors that may be different about the dynamic, how this will unpack. Quickly, when we think about the Metaverse, and we had tons of speeches here, I typically like the mental model of this is a new universe beyond and next to the one we live in. And it sits on the convergence of basically three mega trends in technology between basically virtual, persistent 3D places in spaces that we call Emeralds, everything like Horizon, Fortnite. But the other side, it sits on an incredible evolution of hardware and the whole hardware, the whole stack that supports augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. We're all looking to potentially breakthrough moment this year when Apple comes and joins the crew. And not least, and that's actually where my home is, the whole evolution of Web3. A whole new way how the internet operates all around digital assets. And that intersection and convergence of technologies in the end is where this universe is coming together and emerging in forms that no one can predict, certainly not me. But the one thing that may be different to the autophone is this aligns really nicely with some changes in consumer patterns. And without going into all these stats, just the top line ones, I find it quite fascinating to realize that almost 2 out of 3, 60% of people in this huge survey said that their self-expression in the digital world is more important to them than the self-expression in the physical space. Now, everyone will think that cannot be true. Not 60% don't have avatars, but this is, us posting our identity on WhatsApp, on Instagram. So there is a fundamental shift, and people acknowledge and realize how important self-expression is in the digital world. And certainly, the technologies that come together open a whole new bunch of opportunity for self-expression. The other one I find also always quite shocking to look at, which is 1/3 of the respondents said, I feel more connected to my friends and peers in digital than in IRL. Again, not surprising how much time we spend on WhatsApp and other tools to actually engage with our friends more than seeing them. But this baseline is very different to the baseline of where we were a few years ago, decades ago with the car phone. Now, brought together, this evidently triggers a lot of people to make very bold statements about this brave new world when it comes to how does it impact e-commerce. And I'm not sure I'm with the CEO of NVIDIA in saying the economy that's cooking up here, the virtual one, is going to be much bigger than the physical world of e-commerce and commerce at large. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure, and as bold as the colleagues from Meta or some other consultants who put out a 5 trillion opportunity when it comes to the business opportunity we talk at. But one is sure, it's extra large. And if you put a number to it, we believe it stacks up. Oh, nice copy paste. it's stacking up to 400 billion in a few years. And if you look at the components of it, and I think that's really interesting if we think, hey, this is an e-commerce conference, a lot of it will be at the bottom, which the orange stack, it's the cloud computing power to support these experiences. It's the network on top of it, and it's then also the hardware. If we look at net incremental commercial opportunity, it will be in virtual assets. We don't see necessarily that there's a huge case to make that, what is today digital commerce, e-commerce, will tremendously grow incrementally with just a new channel. The channel will be ultra important, but the real thing in terms of new value pools will be about digital assets. And we've all seen the roller coaster and the winter we have in NFT land at the moment. So it's quite hard to predict, how big this will be. It certainly has huge potential. And if we think about flywheels of adoption to new technologies, and we here talk about a couple of technologies coming together, we are still at very early stages when it comes to the very baseline, which is reliable and accessible, affordable infrastructure. But at the other side, we see some really interesting progress that, we might see this flywheel starting to spin sooner than later. And when prepping for today, just 5 days ago, there was an interesting release from Roblox on their prototype for how to integrate Gen AI into the Roblox experience. I hope this works here in terms of playing. No, it does not. So in the essence, what the short video shows is, and it's worthwhile looking at it, it shows how you use chat to, in the run, change the color of your car, tell the car whenever an avatar is passing by, say hi to it, take the car and fly. You just text it and the whole experience is changing. So the level that Gen AI integration into virtual worlds can bring to the quality of experience is actually pretty phenomenal and might be actually, if we go back to the flywheel, might be a tipping point in terms of driving much harder adoption as the way, again, for self-expression, the way for customizing and personalizing experiences is going to be at a whole different level end of this year. So if this is where we are, and we think about what are the fundamental drivers and things that can lead to 23 seeing a more structural uptick. I mean, we heard a few things earlier on different other speeches. But we look at this in a way in 4 lenses. One is about devices. And again, I mentioned the Apple device. There's some other stuff cooking up at Meta. We will see this year that the install base will reach a tipping point, a bit like the tipping point at which we were with wallet installations, except for we're stagnating at 100 million globally. When it comes to content, I just mentioned Gen AI. I think there's lots of reason to expect. And if you look and track the investment of venture capital firms, a lot is going into, by a factor, enriching the content, thereby the level of experience that can be provided in the whole spectrum from augmented to mixed to virtual realities. So we think that that is aligned with finding more uptake. We are big believers that actually enterprise adoption will be higher than with other trends. Just because, and that's an analogy to the car phone from earlier, just because there is a lot of value in digital twins for factories. It's hard value. Bringing me to the last point, given the current environment we're in, the crunch that has gone through the venture capital world, we see both with investors but also with corporates a much higher attention to value. So yes, it's nice, it's playful, it might be the future. So for all of us, we definitely should try it out, but with a mindset of value creation. And I think we are coming in a way, in a much shorter time span from the car phone that was, clumsy, niche, to potentially a very, very different situation end of this year. The last, a few thoughts maybe before we're coming to maybe questions. If we are looking at where is value today, here are 3 buckets where we see companies extracting already value from this brave new world where the metaverse is. And one is around at more of the top of funnel in a way, driving brand awareness and differentiation. It's a beautiful playground for giving brands an edge. A second one is evidently to use AR and mixed reality in the funnel to actually overcome some of the big barriers that digital commerce always had, which is, for instance, virtual try-on, which in the glasses industry, for instance, is dramatically improving conversion rates, but also minimizing return rates, two factors that are driving hard value. And last but not least, looking in virtual products, I was actually talking to the guys behind Artifact. So the Web3 business that got acquired by Nike. And if you look at, even in days of crypto winter, how virtual first products that can be forged into real products are actually driving value. I think we are having some nuggets of repeatable, proven approaches to extract value. And that's where we believe, that a good focus is that whatever comes, going down the routes to hunt value is a much better and less frustrating way for companies to explore the metaverse. So if we think about, and those are a few examples I mentioned, if we think about this brave new world, what typically we see with corporates, but also with startups looking to exploit this, it's definitely the first one to take a test drive, because I would assume a lot of people here in the audience and beyond have never tried on a virtual headset. And experiencing this first, it makes a lot of sense. Second is, though, follow your customers. A lot of Web3 companies that got bankrupt and insolvent actually thought, hey, cool, I can take all the customers from the Web2 world into Web3, and they found out soccer collectibles don't have any value because fans don't understand them. Who understands them are crypto investors, but crypto investors are in hibernation. And so it's important to really have an understanding, is that a place and space where you meet your customers? Then we believe in sprinkle more than pour, because this is so dynamic and so unclear that you need to start a few test balloons instead of pouring all in. And that means you need to be clear about the value you want to harvest and then experiment and learn against it, because we believe fundamentally it's a great place to shape your future. And with that, I stop myself. I got 2 more minutes or so to take questions on the state of the metaverse.
What are the biggest challenges for fashion brands into scaling into the metaverse, for not just clothing fashion, accessories? I work for Christ, it's a jewelry company. What would be your recommendation for future integration in the metaverse?
So, it's a good question, and there is not a passepartout answer to that. I'm working with a luxury brand in France on that very notion. So what I believe, number one, is you need to find a way that engages consumers and customers that are not exposing them to a technology hurdle. So again, in Web3, if you are centering on building digital assets that people do, again, none of the big typical luxury customers has a wallet. It starts there. And they don't understand what a wallet is. Why do I need a wallet to access this beautiful accessory virtually? So I think it's about taking out from a user experience all the barriers towards this technology. That's the number one thing in adoption. And then ultimately, I think accessories is a beautiful place to start. Yeah, where AR overlays can actually give your products a whole new different experience, and therefore a source of identification and differentiation. But I think it's the technology hurdles.
You showed the very early mobile phone, and if I compare it to nowadays, that we have hundreds of currencies, dozens of blockchains, we do have several metaverses. So what's your vision about how to tie it together? Are they becoming interoperable, or will one survive, the others will die? What can you tell us about it?
Look, again, I don't have the crystal ball. But what I think, if we look at the crazy dynamic in Web3 and the crazy dynamic we've seen around Meta, it leads to a lot of decentralized balloons that are coming up in the air. And to be honest, 2-3 years from now, we will see some consolidation about what are the places that make sense, what are the spaces that will rule, what are the currencies that people adopt to and don't burn their fingers on. So I think also already now, I think a lot of crypto investors have actually learned, there are different classes of currencies to invest in, and that's why I think the next wave of actually crypto investing will be less speculative, a bit more longer term, centered around a few big chip opportunities instead of having this crazy speculative, not understandable foreseeable. So I think we had diverged. We are going to converge pretty soon.
Please.
Too much money has been lost in divergence now.
Hi, I'm Ambika. I'm a social media content creator. You mentioned earlier generated AI and how it will remove the barrier of entry for content. I just wanted to know from you, like, how can creators really ride the storm right now, wherein maybe their work seems to be replaceable in some ways? How is it that they can jump ahead of it and use the tool instead of, be used by it?
It's a very, very difficult topic, yeah. But I think what is already showing after all the hype of the last weeks about ChatGPT, I believe what generative AI creates is a nice version 0 of whatever copy you want to write. You don't see, ChatGPT giving you perfect copies for, an advertisement. So I think it is in a way going back to how creators always work. You always had stimulus for what you do, yeah? And so I think generative AI is going to be a shortcut in terms of the time to your creation. It's going to be a stimulus to be really good in using, and to be really good in exploiting. And then there will come all the backlash actually on IP behind it, which is very unsolved. And that will create some constraints for how this can really be deployed. But I think it's thinking of it as, it's not putting you in front of a white sheet of paper. There's a version on which you can iterate. And so I think the genius creation from 0 to 1 will shift to 0.x to 1. Yeah? And so that's I think how the mental model, how I think about it's not going to eliminate creation. It's going to change the way you can do it and operate it.
Nice. I mean, as an example, I was using ChatGPT recently to figure out which places I could go to create social media content, for example, which was helpful. But I also think that, like you mentioned, there's a pro and a con in terms of how people see how valuable you are. So yeah, thanks for the input.
Thank you.
So
yes, please.
Hi, I'm Liga. I work in digitalization and transformation. Do you have a hot take on Germany, and does it have the infrastructure to support the metaverses for the enterprise because of its famously bad problems with digitalization and internet and all those things? And an add-on, do you think the shifting kind of smaller countries who are famously maybe poorer but have more digital structure like the Baltics all of a sudden gaining value?
To be really honest, I would have to think about that. I don't have a hot take. Yeah. Again, a few analogies. If you look again at Web3, we started a bit earlier in terms of being hot versus, so to say, the core metaverse. If you look at where the talent pools are, that's definitely not in Germany and a few other places. So that has shifted actually where things are happening, and maybe there's a lens on that, but I don't know. I need to think about it.
Please.
I want to talk about the NFT space for a second. I'm wondering, the space was pretty messy the last month, I think, or the whole time probably. What do you think has to shift that brands or e-commerce stores can really use the utilities NFTs are providing? Is it probably regulation, or what are your takes on that?
A good one. My short view is I think there's a presenter coming up on the first Meta beer company. I don't know whether he's here yet, but that, for instance, yes, I think is a really good example of creating some very structural utility. And I think a lot of NFTs have not created a utility beyond being a speculative asset class. And as long as you have a down market like this, speculative asset classes don't fly. So I think there's definitely in many verticals there's an issue about the real utility coming with NFTs. I could go on for hours about what's happening in music, where you would think NFTs should be the thing, and it's not happening. So I think utility is one. Second is really what in the end does an NFT represent? It's not that clear. All I'll say it's carrying ownership. If you go into legal IP questions, it's less trivial than that. And so again for instance in music, if you want to buy an NFT that carries the royalty rights to a song, not that trivial. And so I think a lot of also the design of tokens, need to actually evolve in terms of both legally against, very varying regulatory frameworks, but then also technically what they really carry. They don't carry the meta information you would need for songs. They're just not made for that. So the ECM standards from Ether are just not made to carry the information you would want for a valuable music token. So I think there's some, again, technology advancements. There's actually some regulatory reliability about what this is. There is actually 80-90% scam in the market. Doesn't make it easy for people to believe in it. And ultimately, on the other side, you see 100 million wallets installed. That's just nothing in the broader scheme of things. And actually, a lot of people that carry multiple wallets. And so you have a very small crypto community driving that market. It's evidently going to be a slow path to adoption. So I mean, if you go through that, I think driving the level of utility and the seamless user experience that Web 2 fans can move into Web 3 world, that combination, I think, is the unlock to more sustainable NFT businesses.